Hello, everyone. Today, reflect on Psalms 77 and 78. Psalm 77 is a heartfelt prayer for God's protection and unwavering faith in times of trial, while Psalm 78 speaks of hope for a righteous king, bringing peace and prosperity. Let's open our hearts and listen for God's presence in these sacred words. If you find this meaningful, please subscribe, like, and share to help spread His word. Thank you for joining Faith in Psalm today. Psalm 77, I will call upon I will cry unto God with my voice, He will give ear unto me. In the day of my trouble I sought Him. My hand was stretched out in the constant night. My soul refused to be comforted. I remembered God and was troubled. I complained and my spirit fainted. He kept my eyelids open. I was troubled and could not speak. I meditated on the days of old, on the years of old. I called to remembrance in the night. I meditated within my heart, and my spirit sought diligently. Will the Lord cast off forever? Will He cease to be gracious? Has His compassion ceased forever? Has His promise failed forever? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has He shut up His compassions in anger? Then I said, this is my weakness. Yet I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the works of the Quentin. I will remember your wonders of old. I will meditate on all your works and meditate on your deeds. Your ways, O God, are holy. Who is a God like you? You are a God who does wonders. You have made known your power to the nations. You have redeemed your people, the sons of Jacob and Joseph, by your arm. The nations saw you, O God. They saw you and were afraid. The deeps also trembled. The clouds poured out their waters. The heavens gave up their voice. Your arrows flew here and there. Your thunder was in the whirlwind. Lightning lit up the world. The earth shook and quaked. Your way was in the sea, your path in the deep waters, and your steps were unknown. 20. He led His people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. This passage from the Psalms presents a raw, honest portrayal of human struggle, faith, and the search for comfort in times of despair. The psalmist calls upon God with a voice that is both pleading and steadfast, reaching out in a time of trouble. There is something profoundly moving in this cry, a soul that, even in its anguish, knows that God is the ultimate source of solace and strength. The psalmist's words reveal a spiritual journey familiar to anyone who has wrestled with doubt and heartache. In the day of my trouble I sought Him. My hand was stretched out in the constant night. This reaching, this desperate need for connection, speaks to the universal human longing for comfort when everything else seems to fail. The psalmist's soul refused to be comforted, a testament to the depth of pain felt. Yet it's a reminder that while despair may feel overwhelming, there is also a quiet resilience here, a belief that God will hear. As the psalmist reflects, I remembered God and was troubled, I complained and my spirit fainted. We see a person caught in the tension between faith and sorrow. To remember God, yet still feel troubled, is to face the complexity of faith. This is not a simplistic trust, but a mature, tested faith, a trust that has been shaped by struggle. Even when comfort seems elusive, the psalmist acknowledges the power of memory, holding on to the knowledge of God's past faithfulness. The image of God, keeping the psalmist's eyelids open, resonates with anyone who has endured sleepless nights of worry or sorrow. In times of deep distress, sleep often escapes us, leaving us alone with our thoughts. This image captures the isolation and silence that can accompany suffering. Yet this forced wakefulness can also become an opportunity for reflection, for seeking answers in the quiet hours of the night. In that silence, the psalmist meditates on the days of old, recalling moments of God's faithfulness when He showed His love and power. The psalmist asks profound, haunting questions. Will the Lord cast off forever? Will He cease to be gracious? These questions reveal the depths of doubt that can arise in times of hardship. The psalmist's faith does not prevent these questions. Rather, it provides a framework to bring them honestly before God. By voicing these doubts, the psalmist teaches us that God can handle our questions, our fears, and even our moments of despair. Faith is not the absence of doubt. It is the courage to bring in our doubts before God, trusting that He will understand. In these questions, we find echoes of our own struggles, At times, life circumstances may lead us to wonder if God has forgotten us or if his compassion has ceased. Yet, the psalmist ultimately shifts from despair to remembrance. This is my weakness, yet I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High. Here, the psalmist chooses to focus not on current pain, but on the evidence of God's past goodness. This choice to remember becomes an act of faith, a declaration that God's character does not change, even when circumstances do. The psalmist's decision to meditate on all your works and meditate on your deeds is a model for us. In times of trouble, turning our minds to God's works can be a source of comfort and strength. By reflecting on the ways God has acted in the past, we remind ourselves that he is still at work, even when we cannot see it. This meditation on God's deeds transforms the psalmist's outlook. It shifts the focus from personal suffering to a broader perspective of God's sovereignty and power. The statement, "Your ways, O God, are holy. Who is a God like you?" is a powerful declaration of faith. It acknowledges that God's ways are beyond human understanding, yet they are always holy and just. The psalmist is reminded of God's uniqueness. There is no one like him. This truth invites us to surrender our need for complete understanding, trusting that God's wisdom is far greater than our own. Faith, in this sense, is not about having all the answers. It is about trusting the one who does. As the psalmist continues, "You are a God who does wonders. You have made known your power to the nations." We are reminded of God's power and his active presence in the world. This power is not distant or abstract. It is a force that has intervened in history and continues to work in our lives. God's wonders are a reminder that he is capable of bringing change, healing, and hope, even in the bleakest circumstances. The reference to God's redemption of the sons of Jacob and Joseph serves as a reminder of God's faithfulness to his people. This act of redemption is more than a historical event. It is a symbol of God's commitment to his promises. Just as God redeemed Israel, he remains committed to us. This assurance of God's unchanging love can be a source of strength, especially when we feel uncertain or abandoned. The imagery of nature trembling at God's presence, the waters, clouds, thunder, lightning, depicts a God who is not only powerful but intimately involved in creation. The natural world responds to his presence, revealing a God who commands respect and awe. This portrayal of God as creator and sustainer invites us to see his hand in every aspect of our lives, from the smallest details to the grandest events. Just as nature responds to God, we too are called to recognize his presence in our lives and to live in awe of his majesty. The psalmist speaks of God's path in the sea and in the deep waters, where his steps were unknown. This description captures the mystery of God's ways, which are often hidden from human sight. God's path through the sea reminds us of the Exodus, a time when he made a way where there was no way. In our lives, we may face situations that seem impossible, paths that are shrouded in mystery. Yet God is still leading us, even when we cannot see his steps. Trusting in his unseen guidance is an act of faith, an acknowledgement that he is always at work, even in the depths of our uncertainty. Finally, the psalmist reflects on God leading his people, like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. This image of God as a shepherd is a comforting reminder of his care and guidance. He is not a distant or detached deity. He is a shepherd who leads his people with compassion and wisdom. This imagery invites us to trust in God's guidance, to follow his lead even when we do not fully understand where he is taking us. In times of struggle, this psalm reminds us that we are not alone. God hears our cries, understands our doubts, and is present in our pain. Like the psalmist, we may feel overwhelmed, questioning whether God has abandoned us, yet by remembering his past faithfulness, we find the strength to hold on to hope. God's ways may be mysterious, but they are always marked by love, justice, and holiness. We are invited to place our trust in him, knowing that he will lead us, comfort us, and ultimately bring us to a place of peace. This psalm encourages us to meditate on God's works, to remember his power, and to trust in his guidance. In doing so, we find a source of strength that transcends our circumstances, a hope that endures even in the darkest night. May we, like the psalmist, learn to call upon God, to bring our doubts and fears before him, and to find peace in his presence. For truly there is no God like our God, a God who does wonders and leads his people with a loving hand. Psalm 78, Give ear, O my people, to my teaching, and incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, which our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, but tell to the next generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders that he has done. He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should teach them to their children, that the next generation might know them, even the children yet unborn, and that they in turn should tell them to their children, that they might set their hope in God and not forget his works, but keep his commandments, that they might not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation who did not prepare their hearts, whose spirit was not faithful to God. The children of Ephraim, who were armed and bent on the bow, turned back in the day of battle. They did not keep the covenant of God, nor walk in his law, but forgot his deeds, nor his wonders which he had shown them. In the sight of their fathers, he performed wonders in the land of Egypt, in the field of Zoan. He divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and made the waters stand up like a heap. He guided them by day with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. He split rocks in the wilderness, and gave them drink as of the deep. He also brought streams out of the rock, and caused waters to flow down like rivers. Yet they still sinned against him, and rebelled against the Most High in the wilderness. They tested God in their heart, and asked food according to their desires. They spoke against God, and said, Can God prepare a table in the wilderness? Behold, he struck the rock, and waters gushed out, and streams overflowed. Can he also give bread? Can he prepare meat for his people? Therefore the Lord heard, and was angry, and fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger rose against Israel, because they did not believe in God, nor trusted in his salvation. Yet he commanded the clouds above, and opened the doors of heaven, and rained down manna upon them to eat, and gave them grain from heaven. Man did eat the bread of angels. He sent them food in abundance. He caused the east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he let out the south wind. He rained meat on them like dust, and winged birds like the sand of the sea. He let them fall in the midst of their camp, all around their dwellings. So they ate and were filled, and he gave them their desire. Before they turned from their desire, while the food was still in their mouths, the anger of God was kindled against them. And he killed the fattest of them, and struck down the young men of Israel. In spite of all this, they sinned again, and did not believe in his wonders. Therefore he made their days vanish, and their years perish with terror. When he slew them, they inquired of him, and turned and sought God earnestly. And they remembered that God was their rock, the Most High God, their Redeemer. But they flattered him with their mouth, and lied to him with their tongues. For their heart was not steadfast toward him, nor faithful to his covenant. But he, being merciful, forgave their iniquity, and did not destroy them. Yea, many times he turned away his anger, and did not stir up all his wrath. He remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passeth by and returneth not. How often they rebelled against him in the wilderness, and grieved him in the desert. Again and again they tempted God, and provoked the Holy One of Israel to anger. They remembered not his hand, nor the day when he delivered them from their enemies. How he wrought his signs in Egypt, and his wonders in the plain of Zoan, and turned their rivers into blood, and their streams that they could not drink. He sent swarms of bees among them to devour them, and frogs to destroy them. He also gave their crops to locusts, the fruit of their labor to locusts. He destroyed their vines with hail, and their fig trees with frost. He also gave their cattle to hail, and their flocks to lightning. He poured out his fierce anger on them, wrath, indignation, and trouble, a company of destroying angels. He made a way for his wrath. He spared not their souls from death, but gave their lives to the pestilence. He also struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, the firstfruits of their strength in the tents of Ham. Then he led out his people like sheep, and led them through the wilderness like a flock. He led them safely so that they were not afraid, but the sea covered their enemies. He brought them to his holy border, to the mountain which his right hand had won. He drove out the nations before them and divided them by lot for an inheritance. He made the tribes of Israel dwell in their tents. But they tempted and rebelled against the Most High God and did not keep his statutes, but turned away and dealt treacherously as their fathers had done. They were like a crooked bow. They provoked him to anger with their high places and aroused his jealousy with their graven images. When God heard, he was angry and greatly abhorred Israel, so that he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent where he pitched among men. He gave his strength into the hand of the captives and his glory into the hand of the enemy. He also gave his people to the sword and was angry with his inheritance. Fire devoured their young men, and their virgins had no song of praise. Their priests fell by the sword, but their widows did not mourn. Then the Lord awoke as from sleep, as a warrior rejoices because of wine. He drove back his enemies and put them to everlasting shame. He also rejected the tents of Joseph and did not choose the tribe of Ephraim. He chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loved. He built his sanctuary like the high places, like the earth, which he established forever. He also chose David his servant and brought him out of the sheepfold. From following the nursing ewes, he brought him to shepherd Jacob his people and Israel his inheritance. So he shepherded them according to the uprightness of his heart and guided them with skillful hands. This passage captures the tension between human frailty and divine mercy. It recounts a journey marked by God's patience and steadfast love, even in the face of continuous rebellion. Despite the people's lack of faithfulness, God repeatedly turns away his anger, choosing mercy over judgment. This contrast between human inconsistency and divine faithfulness invites us to reflect on the depths of God's compassion and patience. The passage begins with a stark admission, for their heart was not steadfast toward him, nor faithful to his covenant. This acknowledgement of Israel's unfaithfulness mirrors the struggles we all face in staying true to God amid life's distractions and temptations. Yet, in the face of this unfaithfulness, God's response is one of mercy. He remembers that we are but flesh, a wind that passeth by and returneth not. This line is a reminder that God understands our limitations. He knows our frailties and shows grace in our failings. Throughout the narrative, we see God's powerful hand at work in the wonders performed in Egypt. The rivers turned to blood, the hail and locusts that consumed the land, the death of the firstborn. Each act was not just a display of power, but a call to remembrance for his people. These signs of deliverance highlight God's intervention in times of need. Yet, as the passage notes, the people forgot these mighty deeds, turning instead to idolatry and rebellion. This forgetfulness serves as a cautionary reminder to us. How often do we overlook the blessings in our lives, the times God has provided or protected, because we are focused on immediate desires or challenges? In response to their rebellion, God allows his people to face the consequences of their actions. His strength is given into the hands of captors, and his people are subjected to suffering and defeat. Yet, this is not the end of the story. God awoke as from sleep and returned to rescue his people, driving back their enemies and bringing shame to those who oppose them. This image of God rising like a warrior reminds us that his patience has limits, yet his love is unyielding. God's choice of Judah and his establishment of his sanctuary on Mount Zion illustrate his commitment to guiding his people back to righteousness. He does not abandon his covenant. Instead, he chooses David, a shepherd, to lead his people with uprightness of heart and skillful hands. David's shepherding becomes a symbol of God's care for his people, showing that God desires leaders who reflect his heart and guidance. This reflection reminds us of God's mercy, even when we falter. He is a God who remembers our frailty, yet chooses to love, to guide, and to redeem. May we remember his faithfulness and strive to be steadfast, keeping our hearts set on the one who never abandons his own. Dear Lord, I call upon you in my times of trouble. Please hear my cry. When my heart wavers and my faith is tested, help me to remember the miracles and grace you have shown me in the past. I know that you always guide and redeem us, just as you led your people through the wilderness. Grant me patience and faith to follow you, knowing that you are merciful and forever faithful. I surrender all to you. Amen. Thank you, Lord, for being our steadfast fortress. Under the shadow of your wings, we find rest and assurance. Remind us that no matter the challenges we face, you are our hope and strength. Teach us to wait patiently and to place our hearts firmly in your hands, for only in you can we find true peace. May we sing praises to your name forever, for you are our salvation, our refuge, and our God. Strengthen our faith and lead us in your loving kindness, that we may walk in your truth every day. In moments of trial, let us remember that you are unshakable, our stronghold and hope.